first got to CAVE, the schedule, the agenda was pretty loose, but it filled up very quickly when I arrived. So on the Monday after I arrived, I met with Dr. Svetlana Oksamitna and the chair of the journalism program, also Anastasia Harinko, and we talked about partnerships between our university, MacEwan University, and the social sciences department at the National University of Kiev-Mohyla Academy. So that was very productive, and from there, two presentations dropped out of the sky because Dimitro Mazin, who's the chair of the English as a Foreign Language program, asked me if I would like to speak to two of his second-year bachelor classes. So we put together some selections from the essays that were submitted for the competition. I color-coded them for some of the things for students to look out for coming from the language of Ukrainian into English. And it was wonderful. The first group were humanities students. The second group were social sciences students. So it was really quite overwhelming for me to see the positive response and interest that they had for things like grammar, style, organization, and writing in English. So that was something that was new. And then the next presentation that I gave was a graduate course in communications to communication students within social sciences. And that was a very small, very intimate group. We had some very illuminating discussions about similarities or parallels or analogies between some of the situations in Ukraine and Canada. So I was presenting information about three communication theorists from Canada who were very much interested in national identity. So that had a lot of parallels. So I was providing the Canadian context, and the graduate students provided the Ukrainian context, and we had some very stimulating discussions. I have to say that during that class, it changed my perception of the Ukraine in a very profound way. And you'll notice there I said the Ukraine instead of Ukraine, so it's very important to say Ukraine instead of the Ukraine. But it's centered on the Dnieper River. So I took a tour of the Dnieper River, and I think for most Western commentators, when they look at the map of the Ukraine, they see that river as a dividing line. So they see it as the potential for separation of Western Ukraine from Eastern Ukraine. When I was actually there in Kyiv and talking to people and experiencing it, especially with the input that was given from the students at that graduate seminar, the Dnieper River is not a dividing line, it's a unifying spiritual element. So for me, I came to see the Dnieper River as more of a similarity to the Ganges in India or the Nile in Egypt, that it's a really unifying element within Ukrainian culture. So that was a revelation for me coming from that graduate class. The next presentation was also a surprise because this was an open presentation to all graduate students or doctoral students. And the topic was giving editorial tips, because I've edited for academic journals, for people submitting to Western English language journals, academic journals. And I thought, I think most people here in Canada would think it's a very dry topic, and yet it was standing room only. They had to pull in extra chairs for people, and they were very engaged and interested. Of course, there's an important part for Ukrainian doctoral students, because one of the requirements of their graduation is to have an English language Western publication in an academic journal. So you can see that the stakes were quite high. And yet the last slide that I used in my presentation was a picture of a statue of Julius Caesar saying Veni Vidi Vici, and the entire audience gasped because they really enjoyed that example. So there were surprises at every level, I think, throughout all the presentations that I did in CAVE, but those formal presentations took place within the context of the city itself, the elections that were happening on the Sunday during the week that I was there, and also the political situation in places like Donetsk and Sloviansk and Kharkiv. So I can't really separate the two. In terms of my own research, it was very important for me to see the Maidan Nezalezhnosti, and it took me about a week to figure out how to pronounce that, coming from English, but Maidan Nezalezhnosti. Primarily it was that for us it's a news story. We've seen it on television, we've seen it on the internet, but to see the Maidan physically, you are immersed in the entire environment. So I was overwhelmed, first of all, by the scale. We really do not appreciate, I think, here, going by newscasts, how large the Maidan is and how large the area is of the protests. Also, that there's so much packed into that space. So I'd mentioned to you that every 5 feet there was a memorial, either candles or flowers or pictures. There's also a carnivalesque kind of element to it. One gentleman came up to me dressed as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh and wanted me to pay him to take a picture of him. So I declined. Later on, he came up to me with his mask off, and we shared a cigarette by the fountain, and then I actually talked to him. But so there's so many elements that are mixed together within the Maidan Nezalezhnosti. It's a museum. They've preserved everything, every tire, every barricade, every piece of barbed wire. There are unused Molotov cocktails. There are portions of gas masks. Burnt out buildings have not been renovated or cleaned or transformed. So it's a living museum in that sense. It's also a temple and a shrine. So what they call the Heavenly 100 who lost their lives during the Maidan, their pictures and their memories are strewn everywhere, visually and through these offerings. So that's very powerful, and I don't think that can be conveyed through a TV report or an internet video. It's also a living space, so there are people living there in tents. So some seem almost as if they're part of what's called the Sotnia, so it's almost militaristic. Others seem to be just living there as if it were part of the Occupy Wall Street movement or something similar to that. But so it's so many of these different elements mixed together. And in my own work, when I'm looking at how protest movements are changing and taking shape in the 21st century, I truly believe that the Euromaidan and especially the Maidan Nezalezhnosti as a space, they are manifestations of, I believe, a new kind of social organization. And I say that because so much was spontaneous, so much was organized at the street level between individuals, forming spontaneous groups. And yet, the other lesson that I learned when I was in CAVE was that there is a tradition behind this. The Euromaidan and the Maidan Nezalezhnosti are not 21st century events. or phenomena. I could see elements of that same sort of spontaneous organization and social structures going all the way back to 1600 with the Cossacks and what's called the Vice. I also could hear echoes of it going all the way back to the Kievan Rus in 800 to 1100 AD. So the version of this new form of organization for the world to see in Ukraine is uniquely Ukrainian. And I do not believe that it's an anomaly. I believe that it's something that has grown organically and naturally out of Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian history. So I know that many of the people whom I spoke to in Kyiv are incredibly proud of the Euromaidan and of Maidan Nezalezhnosti as a expression and a manifestation of who they are, and also as a contribution to the world. And really that's where I see my role in these types of research projects, is in conveying that message to the world.